Yeah, but I need to work out.
I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And we have quite a robust agenda, several items that we're going to try to cover today. So what I'll do is I'll, ahead of time, just ask that if you are a speaker tonight, please limit your comments to 3 minutes because we have a lot of people here that may want to speak. Get feedback.
It might be me.
So again, that's the only caveat. And we'll go ahead and get into the meeting. Again, we have a lot of things to cover. We'll start with our invocation. Councilmember Josh Beard, if you will.
Alrighty. Why don't we go and stand since we're about to do the pledge anyways. Alrighty, let's say a quick word. Dear Father, thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for the rain outside, for the daffodils blooming and the red buds and the magnolias and a really nice weekend, soaking up some sunshine. I know we have heavy hearts, Lord, for the folks in the world right now that are going through some tough times with the war in Ukraine, and just ask that you would be with those folks and that there would be peace. Just pray, Lord, for peace. Ask for wisdom in our meeting tonight and everything that we have before us, Lord, that you would help us to carefully consider it and to listen and that there would be collegiate debate. And thank you, Lord, for our town, and thank you for this moment that we have to come together and make decisions, and just pray all this in your Son's name. Amen.
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 I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Bear, for that wonderful invocation. Again, we'll go ahead and get started, and just want to remind Council, I know that you've thoroughly read the agenda, and we'll go through it as expeditiously as possible, but efficiently as possible. So, again, please be recognized during your comments, and we'll have a smooth flow of the meeting. We will go to item D, which is roll call, that the records show that all are present and accounted for. Thank you, Shayla, for sitting in. Monique, our city clerk, is not in today. She's off. Thank you, Shayla, for sitting in. Let's go to item E, which is presentation of the previous minutes for acceptance. Council, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the previous meeting minutes, Mayor and Council regular meeting February 7, 2022. Policy work session February 21st.
We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Beckles. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Myers. Any objection to moving the question? Having heard none, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Let's move down to item F, to set the agenda for the scheduled meeting. So if I could get your eyes to move down to also to item M. And what we do, as I mentioned before, several of these agenda items were discussed at length in our work session, and we've had time to review those and to discuss them at length. So council, at your leisure, can add an agenda item to be discussed or for consent. So what we'll do is go right down the line and decide which items we want to add on our consent agenda. Number 1,
Consent.
Kaboom Playground Lighting. Consent?
Yes.
Okay. Pollen's getting to me. Number 2, surplus vehicle request.
Consent.
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 One day we'll discuss this. One day.
They gotta have cars, gotta have cars. Norcross power rates.
Consent.
Consent. Replacement of a weather alert siren system.
Yes.
Consent.
Consent.
Consent. Number 5, budget amendment to cover the replacement of a police department vehicle.
Consent.
Consent.
Consent. Next page. Number 6, alcoholic beverage ordinance.
Consent.
Consent. Number 7, community work program accomplishments modified community.
Consent.
Consent.
Consent. Electric infrastructure cost recovery.
Consent.
Consent. City manager's goals and objectives.
Consent.
Consent.
Consent. Reclassification of existing position.
Consent.
Consent. Manager evaluation draft.
Consent.
Consent.
Consent. Moving right along. And number 12 is the suspension of city contribution of post-retiree health care for new hirees as discussed in the February 17th Mayor and Council retreat.
Consent.
So close. Discussion.
Discussion.
I really think we need to we'll discuss it.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Mayor, is it appropriate for me to add my item from the floor at this time?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'd like to add NPAC visioning session facilitator proposal, and y'all have the information on the side,
That would be item number 13,
number 13,
impact
visioning session.
vision session.
Second Dr. Beckles' motion.
We have,
Yes, sir.
okay. Oh, okay, we have a motion and second to add number 13, impact visioning session proposal to the agenda for discussion. A motion and a second. The objection to moving the question. Having heard none, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, is same sign. Motion passes. So, very good.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I think there's an additional item that you'd asked to be brought, and that is a resolution of the city in opposition to House Bill
Oh, yeah.
1093 and Senate Bill 494 regarding limitations on our authority to make housing, land use, and zoning decisions.
Yes.
A motion to add a resolution, Mayor and City Council to the City of Norcross, Georgia, expressing opposition to HB 1093 and SB 494, and opposing the imposition of limitations on Norcross's authority to make housing and land use and zoning decisions in the city limits.
Second.
It's been motion and second to add item 14, which is a resolution of opposition to the House bills as presented. Any objection to moving the question? Having heard none, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand, saying aye. Opposed, is same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Okay, we've had a vote and a motion to set the agenda. Chair will entertain one at this time.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
We have a motion and second to approve the agenda with the items noted and added, and just briefly go back through this.
13, 14, 15.
Number 1 is consent, number 2 is consent, 3 is consent, 4 is consent, 5 is consent, 6 is consent, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, consent. And item 12 is discussion, 13 is discussion, and 14, yes, are discussion items. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the agenda? Right hand.
Second.
Opposes? Same sign? Motion passes. Good. Good. We're flowing right along here. Okay, let's move to item G, which is ceremonial presentations, recognitions, and swearing-in ceremonies. The most fun part of the agenda. I'd like to, at this time, have Dr. Audra Arona, if you would please come up. She is the Director of Health for the and CEO for the Gwinnett Newton and Rockdale Health Departments. And she's done a great job keeping us informed relative to this COVID-19 virus. So if you will.
I will. Good evening, Mayor, council members, ladies and gentlemen. Do I have the clicker, or you're gonna do it for me? Okay, go to the next slide. So good news, we are, go back one, there we go. As you can see, our transmission levels are much better. We did reach 6 million deaths worldwide, and the United States has 958,000 deaths. Georgia crossed 30,000 deaths as of this past weekend, but our numbers are decreasing, thank goodness. I wanted to leave this up for just a minute because the CDC changed the metrics, which I'm going to tell you about in just a minute. But the maps show the original way to look at transmission risk across the counties, which we're still using because the hospitals and healthcare facilities and different places, congregate settings, our jails, long-term care facilities use these metrics still. Next slide. So you can see the nice drop of the Omicron variant on the far right. So it did, in fact, that signature curve goes up but then rapidly decreases, which is really great. Next slide. And our case rates are so much better. So Georgia's 14-day published case rate, this is for positive, all positives, is now 181. Last time I presented here was over 1,600. And the percent positivity is now 3.5%, which is very low. Last meeting was 19.8. It was actually on February 7th, so a month ago. Gwinnett County's 14-day published for all positives is 124, and before it was over 1,600 as well. Our percent positivity is 3.8%, as you can see, much less than it was before. The reason we're in the moderate category right now, as you saw on the previous screen, because the PCR positives case rate is less than 100. We're at 97, so that's what moved us into that moderate category. Next slide. So what we're seeing with this new variant, remember last time I was here saying we were really uncertain about this BA2, this sister variant of Omicron. But so far in Georgia, it's only 2% of the cases that we're seeing roughly, and that's based on CDC modeling. We've had about 47 cases in Georgia of the BA2, that's sister variant for Omicron. But unlike some other countries that had a really rapid the cases shot back up after there was a start to be a decline. We're not seeing that in the United States so far. So we're watching it closely, but again, very, very good. And the boosters, as you see, are really important. Next slide. So our vaccinations, over 500 million doses have been given to the United States now. 65% of the United States is fully vaccinated. Georgia is at 55%. That's 1 point up from the last time we were here. It's very, very slow. Gwinnett County is currently at 63% of our overall population that's received at least one dose, 58% fully vaccinated. Still low. Next slide. And as you can see, our populations are still very low. Our black population is at 48%. These are having received at least one dose or more. Our Hispanic population is at 42%. And if you looked at the last numbers I gave you a month ago, they were higher than this. And that's because the state found a bunch of data that wasn't accurately entered. And so they redid it. So we were at 50% with our black population, but now we're at 48%. But anyway, next slide. So this slide will again show you, this is updated as of, end of February, and you can see the red line is the vaccinated and the unvaccinated is the black line that goes very high. These are COVID cases that are positive, and you can see that cases are much higher if you're unvaccinated than you are if you're fully vaccinated, but the gray line at the bottom shows you the benefit of the booster, and the booster dose has been found to be really important to protect against Omicron and some of the other variants I'm sure to come up. But if you look at the relative scale from, if you just look at it relatively to the next one I'm going to show you, next slide, you can see how much the cases increase, how these are hospitalizations for any reason that also test positive with COVID. And so you can see the number, the benefit of being vaccinated is huge on this one. It doesn't necessarily protect you all that, well, it does, but not as great for protection you from getting COVID, but also really protective in keeping you out of the hospital and deaths, as you'll see. So again, vaccinated population much less likely to be in the hospital, and the one with the booster at the bottom shows you much less likelihood if you've gotten the booster. So next slide. And again, this is the deaths based on COVID-related deaths, and you can see that again the vaccination has done, the vaccine has done its job in keeping deaths down as far as everything else. So next slide. Okay, so for February, 2.7 times greater risk of testing positive if you're unvaccinated, 8.8 times higher risk of dying from COVID if you're not unvaccinated. Next slide. All right, so the CDC decided that because 2 years ago when they set the community transmission levels and the transmissibility of COVID, 2 years ago we didn't have the vaccine, we didn't have therapeutics, we didn't have as many people with natural immunity as we do now. So to use the same metrics to assign whether a county is low risk, medium risk, or high risk, they felt like they really needed to change that based on hospitalization, the risk of the extent that our healthcare systems will be burdened, as well as factoring in a level of severe disease. And so that's why they decided on some new metrics. Next slide. So what they're looking at now are, first of all, the new cases per 100,000 population on the left here. And then the other two indicators they're looking at are the total number of hospitalizations that a county has in terms of admissions, and they're also factoring in the percent of staffed beds in the hospital that are due to COVID. All right, so that then would give you a low, medium, or high category. And so based on the original transmission levels before this came out 10 days ago, we were in the high transmission because our percent positivity and our case rates were so high. But this model put us in Gwinnett County down to low based on this. Next slide. So, and with this gives you, each one of those low, medium, or high gives you a list of things that you should do in terms of personal protection, but also at a county level, what do we do, community wide. And so in the low category, basically masks are optional per individual. And there's a whole lot, and I'll make sure that you guys get these slides, but there's other things that you can do. Next slide. The medium risk then really is more concerning those who are immunocompromised, and so they can also elect to wear a mask at this particular stage, or anybody really can. But the important thing is to factor in a healthcare provider that would give them some directives. Next slide. And then, of course, the high level, this is where now we would institute a mask, strong recommendation, or in some cases a mandate with some other measures as well. Next slide. So really what this does is in looking back by patterning their community levels, you could see that even during Omicron, when you looked at the other way to do community risk as opposed to this new model, you could really predict 3 weeks later what was going to happen in hospitals when you start to see those cases rise and the hospitals start to increase. And so that's the whole point of this, is to really be able to track it such that you begin to see with those rising cases when you're going to be in trouble, so that you can institute some community measures ahead of time to try to prevent that. And so in terms of preventing the spread. And so it really works, and we're excited to be able to do this. It's kind of a way, I know several people are like, finally we're getting to some sense here. but it really does give us some better tools to kind of predict what's happening. Next slide. All right, and then lastly, these are just measures that the community can take, not just masking, but the testing strategies, and high-risk individuals, different things, setting recommendations, and respiratory, and making sure ventilation is a factor is still ongoing as well. I think that's it. Next slide. Yes, so vaccine is still our prevention strategy, our main one. We're trying to do what we can, to get that. Gwinnett County had a nice large vaccination event in Lenora Park on February 26th, and we had about 575 people vaccinated in that part of the country, or that part of the country, the county. And so we didn't take appointments, we just had people walk up to get it. So it was a very successful event. We could have given out 1,000, so we were a little disappointed with the number, but in any event, that was there. I don't know that there will be many more incentive events, just because there's not a whole lot of people that are looking for that kind of thing anymore. But nonetheless, we're trying to find ways to get into our community to do different things and offer, how can we get this vaccine and encourage people. What was interesting at the vaccine event was we found several people that said that the reason they were getting vaccinated that day is because the CDC was relaxing all the masking, and now they were concerned. Because if the community is not masking and there's not the regulations behind it, now they were concerned and felt like they needed to go the extra mile to protect themselves. So hey, whatever works, right? I think that's the last slide. Next slide. All right, thank you. Any questions?
Well, Dr. Rona, thank you so much for that very informative update in this ever-changing COVID climate. We certainly appreciate you being here, and thank you so much. We'll open the floor for questions of council at this time.
Just a quick one. What level are we at? Low, medium, high?
We're
In
at
Gwinnett?
low right now.
Gwinnett's at low?
Gwinnett's
Okay.
in low. And we're, by the old measures, we're in moderate,
Okay.
because our percentage now, our percent positivity is less than 5. That puts us in low. And we would be low, except we're still in that 50 to 100 range for the case rates for the PCRs.
Okay, thank you.
Council member.
Okay, can you go back to the way they measured it? I was just curious, like the low, medium, high, when you first showed it. I think I may have heard it wrong. Maybe
Go ahead and go up 3 more. 1 more. That one,
Yes.
right? Mhm.
Okay, so this is new. So they're basing this now on the hospital versus the
Right,
cases?
we're still looking at case rates.
Okay, we're still.
Cases per 100,000, so we're fewer than 200 right now. And, it's based on every county is different, right? Because Newton County is still in moderate. They were high last week because the percentage of their hospital beds that were occupied with COVID patients were really high. And so you can see we're in low because less than 10% of our admissions are COVID, and the percent of the staffed inpatient, was less than 10% for Gwinnett. So we're in low category.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I was just only thinking that, areas or communities that have strong, robust hospital systems are going to likely have lower numbers because they've got the hospitals to take care of it. But it doesn't mean their cases aren't very high. It just means they've got the staff to take care of it. And so that's kind of what I read through that, but maybe I'm wrong.
No, this is like, every hospital, depending on the size of it, is going to have, the percentage is still the same. So if
Okay.
you've got 100 beds and you've got 10% of your beds are COVID, if another hospital in a smaller county has 10% of their staffed or their beds are COVID, it's going to be about the same, right?
Gotcha.
But again, the numbers are going to reflect that. So what you're going to start to see first is the increase of the cases. If we see another variant that's very transmissible, we'll start to see the cases increase first.
Gotcha.
And then we'll see, the effect on the
Hospitals.
hospitalizations. Because those cases will rise first. Hospitals are always a lagging indicator. Right.
Thank you.
Dr. Ronner, earlier, I guess a couple of years ago, when we had talked about this, it's hard to believe that we're in the third year of this. There's a metric that was set at that particular time to be under 4%, to have some semblance of or normality, and it looks like we're really, really close to that.
We are, absolutely. We're under 4%, right now for percent positivity. And, we do need more testing, so the more that we test, but the percentage really shouldn't change all that much. But I mean, it wasn't that long ago, we were 37% positive, more than 1 out of 3 people being tested were positive. So again, that's just that Omicron surge. And I have not heard or had any wind of any other variants right now, so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Yes, very much so.
I actually heard about.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I made a note here to ask you about a variant that was found in Guyana. I got wind of it this morning.
Right. No, I've heard about that, but it hasn't. I think right now they're labeling that as a variant of interest, just to kind of see what happens. So it isn't concerning as of yet, but we're hoping it stays there. The United States has done a good job of getting, again, 75% of 76% of people have had at least 1 dose, right? And so they've done a good job of that, but the problem is that those booster doses and full vaccination is really going to be important for those variants that come down the corner. Again, they're going to become more transmissible and more infectious, probably less deadly over time. That's usually how viruses work.
In case I missed it, is it the B1A virus? B1?
BA1 or
BA1,
BA2.
okay. Yeah, that one seems to not be as, I guess, alarming as we first thought it would be, right?
No, we were very concerned about that because in Denmark, for instance, their Omicron 1, BA1 started to decline. It looked great, and then all of a sudden BA2 just shot out of the ceiling. And so we were worried about that here, but we haven't seen it. For now, this is the third week where the United States has consistently been at 4% of the BA2 sister. It's harder to detect than the first Omicron. That's why they call it the stealth variant, because it doesn't have that marker on the PCR test that we would. But still, CDC modeling based on the sequencing that's going on, they don't think it's any higher than that. So far, so good.
Good. While you're here, I guess we can seek guidance relative to cities and their mask mandates or their mask regulations. Any suggestions to the cities of Gwinnett at this time for municipalities?
Well, if you
City
follow
buildings.
CDC, which is typically what the health department does, is we follow DPH, who follows CDC, and they suggest that now, since we're in low transmission, that mask mandates are really not recommended right now. I think the governor is really anti-mandate anyway.
True.
And for me, I don't ever recommend mandates, but what I do is I just say, hey, when we're at moderate or high levels, let's strongly recommend masking. And then when we're lower, like we are right now, maybe we can take a reprieve, right?
Yes.
But again, our eyes are on those variants coming. Well, meanwhile, while we try to get more people vaccinated.
Great. Council, any additional questions this time?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rona, for being here. We certainly appreciate it. We're going to move into the recognitions part of the agenda. And first, I'd like to ask Kenny to come up. Kenny Anderson is a member of our planning and zoning, and you were chair. You weren't chair?
Co-chair.
co-chair for several years, but you've done a great job for us, and we certainly appreciate it. And Mayor and Council would like to offer a proclamation read for you. Make sure I got your right one here. Okay, and it reads, whereas change is constant and affects all cities, community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. Whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and the full benefits of planning require public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. Kenneth Anderson has been a faithful and dedicated member of the Planning and Zoning Board for a number of years. Kenneth Anderson has faithfully and conscientiously served the city of Norcross and its citizens, during which period of time numerous projects were initiated through his leadership, which will continue to have revitalization and growing impact on the city of Norcross. Whereas Kenneth Anderson has been a powerful influence for good in the growth and progress of our community. Whereas his performance, the performance of his duties and responsibilities as a member of this board has been characterized by excellence and constructive contributions to our entire community. Whereas, as our community looks back over the many years of being, a few individuals stand out for their caring, their contribution, and their vision, which have made the city of Norcross a fine place to live. Now, therefore, I, Craig Newton, commend Kenneth Anderson for his valuable service, his dedication, and many contributions to the progress of the community and to the citizens of the city of Norcross, and extend our personal thanks and those of the city council and all of our citizens for his dedicated and faithful service. Thank you so much for your service on our P&Z.
Thank you so much.
Did you get us? You get us, MB?
I did. Let me. Thank you. Thank you.
You thought you were going to sit down without saying anything. No, go ahead. Say something.
Okay. All right. I'm not a man of many words, but I would like to thank the city of Norcross for the opportunity to serve as a member of the Planning and Zoning Committee. And I've learned a lot about the city of Norcross, and it's just been a pleasure working with the other board members. I'm looking forward to working with other committees maybe one day. So.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere. All right, thank you so much. Next up, we'll have B. Grossman. B, where are you? If you would come forward. B has been a champion for sustainability for Norcross for many years, even before she was on P&Z. If you want to talk about how we can make things better, how we can make things make improvements, you can always go to B, and she will be happy to tell you how we can make things better. Well, so B, I'm going to read this proclamation for you, and it says, whereas change is constant and affects all cities, sustainability planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for people to work and live. Whereas sustainability planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine their future, the future for their community, and the full benefits of planning require public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in sustainability planning and plan implementation. Whereas B. Grossman has improved the Norcross community by contributing to Sustainable Norcross Commission as a member, as its chair, leading the Feet on the Street recycling campaign, and greatly contributing to the Norcross recertification as an Atlanta Regional Commission Platinum Certified Green Community in 2022. It is definitely a mouthful. Whereas B. Grossman has faithfully and conscientiously served the city of Norcross and its citizens, and during which period of time numerous projects were initiated through her leadership, which will continue to have a growing sustainability impact on the city of Norcross. Whereas B. Grossman has been a powerful influence for the good and the growth and the progress of our community. Amen. Whereas her patience, her performance of the duties and responsibilities as a member of this community has been characterized by excellence and constructive contributions to our entire community. And whereas our community looks back over the many years of being, and a few individuals stand out for their caring, their contribution, their vision, which have made the city of Norcross such a fine place to live. Now I therefore, Craig Newton, Mayor of the City of Norcross, commend B. Grossman for her valuable service and dedication and many contributions to the progress and the community, to the citizens of the City of Norcross, and extend our personal thanks and those of the City Council and all the citizens for her dedicated and faithful service. B, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Speech.
Short one. Thank you very much. Thank you to our fabulous staff, Tracy and Lily, who really helped us go through this last certification and receive platinum again. To those that came before us, Connie Weathers, Bruce Gaynor, Josh, Andrew have both also been integral parts of SNC, and then those that are following in the footsteps, Bob Everly, who's here tonight, who's chair, and we've done some great things over the last 8 years that Sustainable Norcross has been in place, from becoming a B city and, maintaining lots of certifications, new projects, Butterfly Gardens, and look forward to seeing more. And thank you all, and council, for your support too.
Thank you, B.
Thanks.
Appreciate you. We have two more proclamations, which I will not read, but I will ask John Petit. Where are you, John? Are you here?
Actually, he wasn't able to come.
He wasn't able? Okay. Well, accepting these awards on behalf of Joey Clayton and John Holland, who John's moved to another city.
And Joey's traveling.
And Joey's traveling. So we appreciate their hard work and their service to the city of Norcross. And if you would, deliver these proclamations to them. Thank you so much. Okay. Now, at this particular time, we will open the floor to citizens desiring to address the governing body. If you would, at this time, come to the podium and give your name and address and your comments. For Mayor Bucky Johnson, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Seems weird giving my address, but Bucky Johnson, 635 Sunset Drive here in Norcross. Welcome, everybody. Good to see everybody. What I was coming to the council tonight about is we've been working on the letters Norcross. They're manufactured, they're ready to go, and I know there was some question about where to place them. Might be a temporary placement, might be a permanent placement, but let me remind you, when we went through this process to gift them to the city, the idea and intent of that was for it to be in the Lillian Webb Park area. And I've heard some other places mentioned in that, or some possibly doing it temporarily someplace and maybe coming to Lillian Webb Park. I hope that you will do it in and around Lillian Webb Park. That's what was the intent. And if it needed to be moved, I talked to the folks that produce the signs, IMG. They've got them sitting in a warehouse right now, and they can be mounted to a steel plate if you're gonna, because you don't want to do an installation like that in concrete twice. So if they did have to be moved, and they're not that large, and I think there was some concern about kids getting hurt on them, and they're aluminum, and I would think if you just put a sign like you did to the fountains, don't swim in the fountains, don't climb on the ladders, I think we're covered, aren't we, Counselor? Anyway, no, you don't have to answer that. I know you won't anyway, but anyway. So I just wanted to, I thought it was going to be discussed tonight, but if it's not, then you can have that to talk about in the future. So thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, and we'll certainly address those at the appropriate time. Any other comments from our citizens at this time? If you would come to the podium, give your name and address.
Michael McGinnis. I live at 836 Northampton Drive in Sheffield Forest. Glad to see the chiefs here tonight. Maybe he can answer some of these questions. We've had gunfire again last Thursday night, and Saturday around 2 o'clock in the evening. A lot of kids out playing at that time. I don't know if they're shooting them up in the air or where they're shooting them at. And I've talked to you about this before. If I knew who was doing it, I'd let you know. But the part is that somebody lives next to them and they won't say anything about it. So that's why we can't get it stopped. Saturday there was 5 rounds shot off. Thursday night there was about 9. People got bullets in the roofs over there. I don't really know. You can't predict when it's going to happen, and it's sort of hard to catch. But I do know that Atlanta and other municipalities has, I guess, what you would call locators. It can actually tell you the caliber of the gun. It can tell the difference between fireworks and other loud noises. It specifically picks up gunfire. Now, if these people are caught, they need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. There's no excuse for it. It's becoming a pretty routine thing again. It quieted down for a little while, but now it's starting to pick back up. It's good. I didn't report the last 2 to the police simply because the ones before that I reported couldn't catch them. And it's like I said, over there, somebody lives next to these people that's doing it. It's not necessarily coming from the same location, but somebody lives next to them and they won't say anything about it for some reason until it eventually, I don't know how much a life's worth to somebody, but eventually if it keeps going on, that bullet goes up and it's going to come back down. And if a kid's out playing in the yard and it hits him in the head, it's going to kill him. And I don't want to see that. If there's anything that the city can do, or maybe the chief can come up with an idea since he's here tonight. I'd like to know, because I really would like to put a stop to it. That's serious.
Yes.
It might cost some money for the, I think the city of Atlanta installed these at one time. And I don't know how much it would cost to do it. Y'all would probably know more than that, but about that. But I think it might be worth in the long run before you're hauling some little child out there that's dead by somebody that's so foolish and stupid to be doing something like that to start with, then it would be worth it. If you just had to get them until you located where the shots are coming from, that would be fine. But this is serious. I mean, those bullets, if they pointed this way, it'll reach this building. And you don't know when they're coming down where they're going to hit.
That's very
So if the chief can come up with any ideas of what I need to do to remedy this problem, I'd be glad to. So, thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments, Mike. We certainly appreciate it. And we will relay those through the city manager to our police chief.
I'm short, so can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Okay.
With the mic.
My name's Lydia Bell, mayor, council members, and fellow community members. I reside at 339 Autry Street for almost a decade now, at 9 years. I've never complained to the council about any of the activity at the park, including loud music that shakes my walls or many different groups smoking weed at the park in broad daylight, until 2020, when 5 gunshots were fired right next door, right after my husband and then first grader were tossing the football around in the parking lot. The second shooting incident, also at the park before dark, was right after a baby shower was at the pavilion being hosted, which I'm sure was terrifying, not only for us, but the ladies who were breaking down after that shower. Being parallel to the park, we have a full view of the pavilions, the playground, the parking lot, the baseball field, the basketball goals. So as you can imagine, we, including my now 3rd and 7th grader, can see everything that goes on next door. Let me first thank the council and the mayor for quickly reacting to ensure the safety of our surrounding Norcross residents. I would also like to mention that what has been even more surprising since the removal of something as simple as basketball goals is that young families of all backgrounds with children have been frequenting the park and the playground now. People have continued use of the pavilions for events with no issues. People have been renting, using the baseball fields, teenage girls playing softball for their practice, and what looks like company kickball events with no issues. There have been no additional disturbances, loud, obscene language, or other noise disturbances. Most importantly, this is the most surprising part to me, is that the groups who used to come in the middle of the day, because I work from home, I can see a lot, and my husband does as well, and they would smoke weed at the smaller pavilions right next to the playground, have ceased to come to the park. Interesting, because I did not realize that these were patrons of the court until this, because the court is the only thing that's shut down now. This is critical. As I mentioned, many children use the playground parallel to the park, even during the day, and these people would unashamedly would be doing these drugs right next to them. It's almost shocking that removing only one tenant of the park, the basketball courts, could bring such calm, order, and availability for all to feel safe enough to bring their families and friends to the park now. Additionally, there is a location in the same proximity of with Best Friend Park that has multiple basketball courts available and apparently underused. Now, I petition the council to consider all of this when making the best decision for the overall safety of the community. When considering what next to put at the park, why not consider families rather than adults who don't allow the youth to even use the courts during peak available times for the youth to utilize it? Norcross is a place to imagine. Well, why not bring something different, which is not available at any of the nearby parks and would encourage a familial community? So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for your comments. We've recorded those and we'll take those under advisement.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Alicia Pinkston and I stay at 326 Hunter Street. I also had a concern with the basketball courts at Rosie Brundage Park, which is my great-great-uncle, which the park was established by. I personally grew up playing basketball, softball with my church teams on the playground when the slides were still metal and they would burn you coming down during the summer, and we never had any issues. And now to come in and my children actually go to the same park and they played basketball with some of the Norcross officers, and they have grown to know the officers and gain relationships. So now we're talking about removing the basketball courts, which now punishes the children of the community instead of holding the individuals responsible for these activities, which to me seems that Norcross Police Department, the way they used to come out and play with the kids, should be more present in the communities to where these people do not feel comfortable to come and do these activities in that area, because now we are putting the crime on a basketball court. Those individuals aren't there to play basketball. If you're doing drugs, you're not playing basketball. If you're shooting your guns, you're not there to play basketball. That's not the issue. The issue is the crime and the individuals committing the crimes. So my suggestion would be to increase the police presence in the community so they can come out and interact with the community, because now my children will have to go from my home where they can walk to the park and play to Best Friend Park, which means I would have to drive them physically to a county park, which is the majority of adult males, which I cannot allow my daughters to go and play anymore. So I just think it needs to be more of a community-based effort of controlling the crime. The crime is the issue. I mean, I have been living in Norcross my entire life, and I have never had any issues. I trust my kids to go there now. They can walk there, and I can say, hey, let me know when you get to the park. They play on the softball field when it's not in use. They play on the playground, and that's another issue too. If people feel safe to play on the softball field, how are you feeling safe when you used to play there with the basketball courts were still there when the softball games were going on? They didn't have any issues. These issues are coming from unruly residents, and that's who I think should be held accountable for this, not punishing the children that do utilize the basketball court and the individuals that actually do go out there and work out because it's something that they do outside of school and other structured sports and activities. I think it would just be an injustice to the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments.
Hi, I'm Julie Schilling. I live at 5988 Clay Street. I too would like to discuss the park. And as this nice lady said, I'm also from Norcross, elementary school, middle school, and the old Norcross High School. So if you remember back in the old days, Thrasher Park was tennis courts. And when the city decided we were going to turn the tennis courts into a park, we lost our minds. We thought, where are we going to play tennis? What are we going to do? Right? You're shaking your head, you understand.
Oh, I remember the red shirts.
Right? We lost our minds, but what do? We put in a park that's great and it's used by everyone. Families, concerts. You go there on a Saturday, there's lots of kids there playing, right? So we find something else to do. Lillian Webb, same thing. Where were the boys, girls, where are we gonna play softball? Where are we gonna play baseball? Because that used to be a field, and that's where we all played ball. We got rid of it, and we lost our minds. What do? We created a great space that we can all use. I'm asking you guys all to have careful consideration in what you do with that park, and know that with change comes great things. And we can all accept that maybe we need to change that park because what happens there is not good for our community. So let's have careful consideration in making it a useful space for all of us.
Thank you for those comments.
My name is Kathleen Allen, and I live at 297 Longview Drive, and I'm again here to speak to you about the basketball courts at Rossi Brundage. I have a question and a request for mayor and council to consider. First, I went back through the minutes of council meetings and found no vote to remove the basketball rims in the last 7 months. Was there one prior? You can nod if there was. Okay. And yet we Norcross residents find ourselves here to make a formal request for 5 council members to vote to put back some or all of the court rims. To me, this raises significant concerns about the governance of the city of Norcross. Imagine if someone had shot a gun in the playground at Thrasher Park, and in response, the city manager had unilaterally instructed city staff to remove all the playground equipment. Let's be clear, the tennis courts were rarely used. The basketball courts get used a lot. Would you have allowed that as mayor and council? Or would we have had to protest in the park to get mayor and council to vote to put back the swing sets and the slides? This is functionally what has happened in Rossi Brundage Park. But before we can get to such a vote by mayor and council, you referred the issue to a committee of appointed individuals, none of whom were elected by Norcross voters. They in turn set up a subcommittee on the topic, led by an individual who is, in her own words, opposed to basketball courts and basketball players. Per Krista DeKuyger's February 6th email to mayor and council, quote, I am not sure how exchanging a full court with a less than full, non-regulation court would dissuade people who use guns to communicate and fight from playing a game of pickup. I ask you to consider that. Will the out-of-towners look at the hoop court and say, this isn't regulation size, let's find somewhere else, hidden where we can play on regulation sized courts, smoke weed, and curse. I ask for no basketball courts here. End quote. This process has been set up to fail the voters of Norcross, and it sets a dangerous precedence of unaccountability to voters and all residents in our city. It's unclear who has the authority to make decisions to dismantle significant public resources and who has the authority to correct such decisions. So I ask you, as our elected representatives, to clear up that confusion and instruct city manager to have staff put at least some of the rims back so the kids can play. And then set up a process whose outcome is not predetermined by people whose mind is, in their own words, clearly biased against basketball players. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I appreciate being here. Any other comments at this time? No, go ahead.
No, it is Mr. Colehouse, and I live at 371 Nesbitt Street. And I sort of take a different approach. I don't think I've had trouble doing it before. But what we're talking about is not the hard, true equipment or anything else. It's talking about maybe I haven't heard anybody talk about the cars that are along the side where it's no parking. And those are the same kids that are doing it. It's not hurting us, but they're doing it. So we have to do something else. And what's about it is the children and how they get it to them, and what you think maybe you heard from the council or from, it's not. They've got the same problem we do. They're just looking at it differently. Or I'm asking you to look at it differently. So you can see that we've got something that we need that's valuable to us. It's very valuable to us. Not to me, I'm so bad. But I'm hoping that we will gain something out of this that will give us progress to go forward and end up with something that is for everybody in some way. I don't know what that is, but I know it can be done. And the people here, actually, I'm sure that other people can speak, but that's okay. They have the same thoughts, and we just don't know how to express it to the different types of people that we have here. But we know we have good people, and we have ways of resolution. So hopefully we can do it. I know we can do it.
Thank you for those comments. We certainly appreciate you being here. Any other comments from the public at this time? You may. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Tixie Fowler. I'm a resident at 37 North Barton Street and chairman of Norcross Parks, Green Spaces, and Trails Commission. For the record, this commission consists of Norcross residents. We represent diverse backgrounds, genders, ages, and ethnicities. We volunteer our time to support our community and provide city staff, mayor, and council with progressive recreation management recommendations intended to help our natural and human communities thrive. I would like to thank council for recently directing the PG&T board to act as an independent task force that addresses the concerns being voiced about the basketball court currently in Rossi Brundage Park. I'm not aware of anyone saying that basketball isn't wanted. So our task force is inviting people from all corners of Norcross, not to decide if we should have basketball in Norcross, but whether Rossi Brundage Park is the best location for a court that is accessible and safe for the majority of the young people living in our community. We have the chance to reimagine. We have reached out to organized after-school groups at both Norcross and Paul Duke High Schools and invited those students to participate as part of our task force. So far we have no takers, but it's only been a week and a half, and one of my students, an 8th grader in Summer Arm Middle School, has raised her hand to help. She will be working with us to engage the young people in our town and help explore the many facets of this very complex issue. We're planning to do surveys. We're planning to get younger people involved. She's already got a whole list of friends that she's bringing on board. And we want to do interviews with a diverse sector so that we represent a lot of different perspectives, angles, and consideration. These are the young people, the future of our community, that we are engaging, and we've already begun engaging, to help address this problem. So with that sense of inclusiveness and with the approach of open-minded problem solving, I'd like to invite anyone who is interested in being part of the solution to join the next discussion at our PG&T Commission meeting. It's a public meeting. We meet next door, actually. It's here on the 2nd floor. And our next meeting is actually next week. It's Thursday, March 17th. We begin at 5 p.m. It's a very round table. I'd love to see you young ladies in the back there. We'd love to hear your voice as well. And again, thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing the PG&T Commission the opportunity to serve and support our community and help you make the best decision possible for Norcross.
Thank you so much, Tixie. We appreciate you being here tonight. Any other comments from citizens at this time? You may have to lower that mic a little bit.
So hello, Council. My name is Walter Bell. This is the second time I've appeared before you guys on this subject about the same thing, Rossi Brundage Park. So thank you for hearing me the last time, and thank you for reading my email. I sent a very detailed email, and some of the responses, I was very excited to hear that you guys were receptive to what I wrote, because it was really close to my heart. We live at 339 Archer Street, so my wife has already spoke. But we have a very intimate knowledge of what's going on at the park because we live on the street. So, I mean, it's a little bit different from living around the corner or being here for several generations. We live on the street, which means we're there every day. This is home. So I think what we say about what's going on at the park is a pretty fair account of what's actually going on. So I hope you guys will take into strong consideration what we're saying. So after 9 years of being at the park, I have a few observations. Most of the people who book the park that are patrons, they use the baseball court, the baseball field, they use the playground, they use the pavilions. Our pavilions are nice. Those large groups that we see there, they typically don't use the basketball courts. We've seen that. So the large groups that are typically there get to use the park and not necessarily focus on the basketball courts. I don't think that's a problem. The 2 shooting incidents that we're talking about were not isolated events, because 2 or 3 times a week when the basketball court was in place, we would have the loud noise. We would have the parking on both sides of the street, which is a hazard in itself. We get random groups of grown men that are at the park. They don't care about their surroundings. They don't care about respecting. They're just looking for a place to drink and smoke. A lot of folks using the basketball courts do not live in our neighborhood.
So we're not serving this community the way we intend. This park is next to a sacred church, right next to it. A playground where kids who are toddlers, the playground itself was designed for toddlers. It's a school where kids as young as 5 years old, right behind it. And then there are houses, the neighborhood right there in front. So basketball, especially the way it's situated in this park, it's not good for the community where we have a bunch of young families that are moving here. We want that to keep coming. We want that to thrive. Part of the reason why my family moved here was Thrasher Park. We were just at church on a random Sunday. It was nice. We had been looking in Alpharetta, Sandy Springs, all these different places. But I looked at my wife and I said, what about here? And she concurred. And despite our agent looking at these other places, she found our house, and we've been super excited because the park was supposed to be a good thing. Our police don't have time to babysit the park. I've seen a lot of times where the police respond accordingly, but the police would literally have to be there hour upon hour to really control the park because of the way it's situated. They don't have time for that. We don't really want to put the police on the hook for police in a park that could be shifted. If we put it in a more controlled environment, say next to the police precinct, if we're going to have them monitor it, then we might as well make it easy for them to do it. Options. The truth is, we have basketball in a lot of places here in Norcross. Best Friend Park is not that far away. It's open court, open season. Hopewell has a youth center. It's open on Friday nights for the youth. That's available. My family, we personally put a basketball goal at the Hispanic church that borders Hopewell. We use it. We see other people using it. BIA school has their own gym. So the kids get to play there. We've got basketball everywhere. So since we already have plenty of options for basketball, why not do something different? I have a few questions too. I heard somebody say this was a serious thing. I agree. Gunshots fired next to your house, in your community where you feel safe most of the time, that is serious. Does somebody have to get hurt in order for us to take it serious? Like you said, does somebody have to get killed? When the facility is not available or safe for the citizens and the kids who should be able to use it the most, that's a real problem. Why would we recreate a situation that we already know to be a problem? Doesn't our city representation want to make sure we get it right, since we have a chance to improve a bad situation? My bottom line is, the park is disruptive. The parking situation was madness. Nobody was monitoring that. It's an accident waiting to happen when you got cars on both sides of the street. It's not safe because it's not in a controlled environment. The way the park is situated, the trees around it, the bleachers are behind the park, the courts itself, and then you have the walking trail where there's trees. So a lot of the dirt that happens at the park happens right there on those bleachers where you can't necessarily get close to it, and if the police were reacting, they would have a chance to clean up before they get in trouble. So it's really hard to police. Whereas if we put it in an open space, you can see a lot better, and I think people would not necessarily feel comfortable doing dirt. Basketball is an aggressive game. So with adrenaline pumping, if you're in an uncontrolled environment, things will happen. But if you're in a controlled environment, you have a better chance of keeping control. We have a good enough sample at this point to know what we're dealing with. I mean, our input should be considered because we've looked at it up close. Rosie, the park itself, will always be a great park. I love it. I moved right next door to it intentionally because I wanted to be in a community just like this, and I wanted my kids to be able to grow up and have access to a park like that that's nestled in a neighborhood like this. So all the access from the pavilions to the bathrooms to the playgrounds, the barbecue grills, the baseball fields is used multi-purpose style. You got soccer, you got baseball, softball. People who book the park are usually great. We got church people that come there, other religious groups. We got all type of parties. You got tablecloth type parties that happens at the pavilion. Sometimes we get invited, sometimes we go. So we have a lot of fun at the park. And people like me who loves to hoop and those who want to hoop, they're gonna find a place to go and play basketball if you really want to play, especially in a place like our neighborhood where you have so many options. Basketball itself is a game I love. Basketball courts in itself is not a bad thing. Basketball courts in that spot at Rosie is not good. Let's take this opportunity and make it a golden one. Let's go in the absolute best direction that's inclusive of everybody that's supposed to get the most out of the park. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. We appreciate you being here.
Hello, Council, and hello, fellow citizens. My name is Rodney Pinkston from 326 Hunter Street. I too want to go ahead and discuss the park issue. I understand everybody's concerned about gunfire. Gunfire is real, but at the same time, though, I don't think it's no 8, 9-year-old, 13-year-old running around with no gun. And if there is, then we need to be going ahead and doing something about the parenting that's going on in the situation. But even outside of that right there, okay, I feel like a lot of people have valid gripes about the park, but at the same time, let's find a good compromise. Like maybe we just have one goal. Because one goal would cut down on the amount of people that's there. And if you cut down on the amount of people that's there, everybody can have fun. Maybe right there with the walking trail, we could add a camera. Because he's right. That's a whole blind spot for the police, so it make the police have to babysit a situation that they should not have to. But at the same time, then I hear gunshots at 11 o'clock at night. What kids are out? My fellow citizen right here, he hears gunshots 2 o'clock at night. What children are out there? So we can't just go ahead and outcast the park. That right there is like us being hypocrites without trying to find a way to fix the whole problem. And the problem is that we are all divided right here on this subject right here when we can go ahead and find some type of easy compromise. I ain't gonna be long-winded with this right here. Thank y'all for your time.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Holly Izo, and I live at 398 Autry Street. And I'd like to follow up on previous inputs regarding the basketball courts at Brundage. I'm a single mom, and I live on Autry Street with my teenage son. We live directly across from the field and basketball court at Brundage Park, and have lived there just shy of 14 years. I not only live there, but like Walt and Lydia, I work full-time for my residents, and I have a good pulse as to what goes on in the park on a daily basis. Our neighborhood that surrounds Brundage Park is an eclectic mix and diverse group of families, and we are the ones that are literally in the direct line of fire. The matter of the basketball court is pure and simple. It's about safety. It's safety. The basketball court at Brundage is not safe. It is too secluded and has promoted violence. The court is frequented by adults who are not from the neighborhood and are very comfortable with bringing weapons into the park, as evidenced by the shootings, further making the pavilions, the softball field, playground, and neighboring areas unsafe. Asking for removal of the courts is tough. I'm a huge proponent of youth sports. My own son is an active athlete involved in 3 sports, and he loves the courts at Brundage. So this is not asked lightly. Unlike others, I have never previously called for the removal of the courts until this past October's shooting at Brundage. After the first shooting, or should I say shootout,
I reached out to city leadership with some thoughts on how to make the courts safe, how we might save the courts, keep the courts there, but it remained status quo. My views were significantly changed after the second shooting occurred, a year from the previous shooting. Matt Myers had been over to my house not a few hours later is when that shooting occurred. Had it been a few hours later, you know, I know that goes to your heart. The history of violence at Brundage basketball courts are not isolated incidents as evidenced by repeat shootings. It's ongoing, as well as other suspect activities in addition to the shootings. It should also be noted, as many other people have pointed out, that basketball is still available to anyone wanting to play. Best Friend Park has a highly visible court, nice courts. It's literally down the street. So rims not being at Brundage or the courts not being there is not end all be all. With that, you as the city leaders are responsible for the kids' safety and that of the residents and any visitors to our parks. You as our leaders will ultimately be held accountable for the safety. It's no longer about wants, it's about needs. My own son loves those courts, but what he wants and what he needs are two different things, and his safety is paramount to me. The need to keep the community safe eclipses any wants to put those rims back up. To not view this or not consider this as a high-level public safety issue would be irresponsible. I implore you all to help keep my family, my neighboring families, and visitors alike safe at our parks. Our city leaders need to make our safety paramount. The focus needs to be on safety, and unfortunately, as our leaders, the burden is on you. So I appreciate your time, and if anybody would like to have a discussion further, as I've said, over the years and extended emails about what goes on in the park, we can have that conversation. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate those comments. Anyone else at this time?
Good evening. My name is Eric Allen. I live at 297 Longview Drive, and I didn't prepare anything like my wife did, so I'll try to be brief and coherent. 2 Thanksgivings ago, there was a shooting across the street from our house, back in the Norcross Hills neighborhood. It was a police officer shooting at the neighbor of ours who lives across the street from us. The response to that was not to remove my neighbors from their house for 6 months while things could be investigated, or to take away the guns from the police officers for 6 months while we investigate this. An investigation, I'm sure, was conducted. I have no idea where that went. But my point is that my biggest concern here is the process of what's been happening. The rims were taken down. The constituents who make use of or made use of that park have been painted as bad people, particularly the basketball court users are being painted with a very broad brush here as bad people who are criminals. I mean, not just bad, but criminal people making use of that park. They can't be contacted right now. They can't represent themselves at this point because the rims were taken down. The group can't come here and speak for themselves because they don't even know, I'm sure, many of them, that this conversation is being held. It bothers me greatly that we don't know as citizens who has the authority to dismantle portions of our parks, our public resources. We don't know who has the authority to override those decisions, put things back, and we are foreclosing the opportunity of people who don't get to be represented in the discussion by having already driven them away from those courts. Crime needs to be taken seriously. Gunfire absolutely needs to be taken seriously. Parking issues should be enforced, absolutely. But the process here, I would really like to know what the process ought to be, and who has the authority to dismantle portions of our parks, and who is required to lend approval to reconstruct those things. So we have hindered our own ability to collect data and make an informed decision on this topic at this point. We already have. The hoops are down. I think putting the hoops back up gives us the ability to collect more data now that the problem is being discussed openly. See how things go. Track more closely the police response and the need for parking enforcement, the need for drug enforcement, vice of all kinds. I love the idea of putting a camera on that trail. That's a great thought. Let's do that. But there have to be other creative solutions available to us here that do not treat basketball like crime or basketball players like criminals. Yes, there are other courts available outside the city limits or at private institutions. I've heard a couple of churches mentioned, and I've heard a county park that is outside of Norcross, which, great, if we want to take up the annexation topic, that'd be wonderful. But, let's get that into the park, into the city here. But I think the process is bad, and the identification of who has the authority here to make these decisions, and has authority been overstepped already in making these decisions? I think those questions are critical, not just for this issue, but moving forward for how the city is run. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much for those comments. Certainly appreciate you being here. Any other comments from our citizens at this time? Unfortunately, because this is not an agenda item, we really can't get into a debate on the issue, but I know that it's on the hearts and minds of everyone who got up to passionately speak, whether they were for or against the courts and the goals being installed or removed there at Thrasher Park. When it becomes an agenda item, we will certainly get the information out, and we will answer questions concerning who has the administrative authority. And of course, with any decision that's being made, the City Council has the authority to override any decisions as elected officials. Just putting that out there. Now let's move on to the next agenda item, which is comments by council at this time.
I'd like to say something, Mr. Mayor.
Council.
In light of what you just said, I would like to discuss it, though. And as this is comments by council, it is perfectly acceptable for us to discuss a little bit about it.
During the comments of council, yes.
I have no clue how this got so damn sideways. I, from 2015 until the start of COVID, played basketball as a mission for my church at Rossi Brundage Park every Tuesday. I don't know what happened before COVID, because there have been some ongoing concerns, but I can tell you when I played there every single Tuesday, it was young children, and that's where our mission was the youth. How this got so sideways is beyond me. It's very frustrating that there has been probably a lack of resources dedicated through the budgeting process, which is our job. But there's no police light. We have a police light at Lillian Webb. We have a police light at Thrasher Park. I don't believe there's one. Chief, is there one there at Rossi Brundage?
In the pavilion.
So it's not down near the basketball court? Okay. As I use that court, it's probably more than any of the elected officials here, and I got to play basketball there probably more than most gentlemen my size and age in the world. But we really need to think about how this works for the kids. And I go back to one thing. Grown men run it full. That's what grown men do. Grown men run it full. What that means is they're going to play full court basketball.
Absolutely.
You solve a solution for this in the easiest possible way. You put one rim up on one of the sideways, and you don't advertise it. And then all of a sudden you have the kids start to show up. I know this is a heated topic, and I know that the process that Mr. Allen spoke about was that we kicked it to our Parks and Green Space Commission, and I expect them to have some results. But I want to speak on behalf of something that happened this Saturday when I was at Thrasher Park, when I met with Officer Massey, and he met with two young children from my church, Ephraim and Josiah Rao, both of which have grown up playing basketball at Rossi Brenda's Park. They both expressed the same concern I have. It's changed. Over the past before COVID, it's changed. There's a lot more, I think, loud music, the bass shakes your house. Even they've acknowledged it. And Officer Massey, which is what I believe a young lady mentioned, that the police play basketball there. Absolutely. Officer Massey remembered these two young men. That opportunity for our police to interact in that environment has been taken away. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We can repurpose this. We can walk and chew gum, as Bruce always says. We can walk and chew gum at the same time about this. We got some emotional charged issues here. I think the best thing for us to do is to just understand we're kicking it back to our Parks and Green Space Commission. There can be some discussions that'll be open to the public in that phase. I would also recommend we put one rim back up on the side to sides and just see what happens. The problem of that basically at that point becomes a street basketball kind of like neighborhood basketball goal. I don't believe that the grown men that come and play, I mean, you've seen it. I don't know if they're going to come and play. The problem with the running it full, as I said, is they run it full and you end up having, inevitably, you have young kids playing on the side ones. And when the men go back to the other side, these kids come out and they shoot a little bit. The men come back this way, they have to get on the side. Our kids are being pushed off of these courts first by these adults that aren't behaving, and now we're trying to push them off ourselves. I think we need to find out a solution that'll ultimately re-envision the entire park, but will allow the Norcross residents to use that park, and it'd be a walkable park. That seems pretty reasonable for me. I think we need to have some public debate about it, but I just don't know how this got so sideways. The rims have been down. Ms. Izzo emailed us asking for the rims to be taken down in October, I believe, or maybe Holly Izzo. Okay, it was October. Taking the rims down, I think in that response we did take the rims down, and they remain down to this day. So I think with the mayor's permission and with the council's direction, we should probably instruct the city manager about what he has acted on behalf through his authority to remove these rims in the interest of public safety. We need to decide if it's still in the interest of public safety to have all those rims down. I don't know if we do that on a policy work session or if we just let it work back through the process with the Parks and Green Space. I think ultimately the Parks and Green Space will give us a recommendation through what we want to do with that park. I think there's an easy solution here. As Mr. Pinkin said, I think there's a real easy solution that involves maybe pickleball, that involves maybe a little neighborhood court where they can just shoot in the side. The parking issue, I think we stop leasing out the softball. The softball comes and they're there all the night, and we lease that out. The community doesn't get to use that when we're leasing it out, because those are they're teams that come and lease that. And the parking, it's always a Jeep. The Jeep comes in and parks right there. So I think there's a lot that we can do about this. I think we need to take a deep breath and realize that ultimately our safety is paramount, and our safety of our youth, which is what Izzo said, is absolutely what we need to do. At the end of the day, I pay Norcross Police to protect my child. I don't pay Gwinnett Police to protect my child. I don't expect my children to have to walk across Jimmy Carter Boulevard and Beaufort Highway to get to a non-city park to play basketball. It's not fair to ask our young children to have to do that.
Thank you, Councilmember Hickson. We're into discussion for any other council comments?
And Coffee with Council's coming up this on the 21st. Come talk about it. We might have this on the agenda.
Yeah. On the 21st.
19th?
The 19th.
Okay.
And I'll be out of town.
Any other issues council want to bring?
Yeah. I'd like to personally thank Kenny Anderson for his service on the Planning and Zoning Board. Myself coming from the Planning and Zoning Board, and him helping me on board to the Planning and Zoning Board was phenomenal. So I really do appreciate all your effort, your work, and your time. And I know basketball is dear to this man as well. His son is always in our backyards playing basketball. So just on the subject of basketball, but yeah, thank you so much for your time and your work and your effort in our community. I don't know if B is still here, but B as well. Thank you for your service on sustainable and all your work in our community as well. Thank you, and that's the end of my comments.
Okay. Any other council comments at this time? No other comments? Just a few things to bring to your attention. Several citizens have asked, about some of the events that involve council and mayor. So I wanted to just share a couple of those. On March the 15th, some local pastors are having a pastor's appreciation luncheon to show appreciation.
What day is that, Mayor?
For March the 15th.
Is it Tuesday?
Yeah, and I will get you more information on that. And of course, you know, our local churches are involved in our community, and they asked me to come bring a few words on the 15th. I'll certainly do that. The Atlanta Korean Community Against Asian Hate is holding. They're holding their anniversary commemoration. There we go. On March the 16th. To commemorate the act of senseless violence against some of our Asian community members. I was asked to bring comments there in a brief speech at the Korean American Center. This is here in Norcross at 6 p.m. on March 16. Earth Month is a kickoff to celebrate the Norcross recertification as a Platinum Green City. And that will be held, staff will have to help me out. It's on the 4th, April 4th at 12 at Betty Malden Park. And was asked to bring brief remarks to that. As a brief program right here behind us. March 28th, I received an invitation from the Consul General of Japan to attend a reception honoring the birthday of His Majesty Emperor of Japan. This will be held in Atlanta on March the 28th. And lastly, this weekend the Norcross High School boys and girls team will advance to play in the Macon in the playoffs, state playoffs for their respective titles. They've done very, very well this year.
In the Final Four?
The state finals.
The state finals?
Yeah, state finals.
Okay.
And they attribute some of their spark from their new scoreboard that the council approved and helped to install. And they expressed appreciation and asked for your support if you're going to drive to Macon. And that's all I have, other than we'll get to the general announcements, but City Manager, your comments at this time.
Yes, sir. Well, as you can see up there, a couple of the items I had were reminders that there were items to add to the agenda tonight, and you've done that. I want to remind you that last week, our Economic Development Director sent you, and I'll pronounce it correctly, a scoring rubric that we propose to use this month and bring back a recommendation to you. It's a methodology used to assess affordable housing projects. We expect at least one, and hopefully more than one, but that was developed by the Norcross Development Authority, working with our staff. And we've given you, I think, a version tonight that addresses one math issue, but it's intended to allow you to have information that you can use when we come back to you for your policy decision on, should there be more than one proposal, on how we would award what's called a kick point. And the 9% federal tax credits is an incredibly and aggressive statewide process, but you have the opportunity to assign a point, which may be the difference between a project in Norcross passing the test and scoring high enough to receive those federal tax credits or not. So it's a serious process. We don't know yet whether we'll have more than one, in which case we'll score the one. But if you have any questions, let us know. But our intent would be to have staff use that to evaluate, and we will then make a recommendation to you so that you can make a decision in April. Is that right, Ms. Corbin? And the statewide process occurs in May. So any questions? Mr. Corbin is here if you have any questions related to that, but that's the process we intend to pursue. And you know, even if we just have one project, we've developed a process that can be used in the future to deal with multiple projects. I want to also announce that we have successfully completed our search for a finance director. We've made an offer and it's been accepted. Paul Hannabuth will be joining us in 2 weeks, and I want to publicly thank Sonia Hampton for her leadership in the last 3 months. She's had a great opportunity to take the helm of our department, and I met with her earlier today, and I will be bringing back to you at your March meeting a recommendation for a reclassification to change her title. She's historically been the accounting manager. What I'd like to do is to officially designate her as Assistant Finance Director. I think it recognizes her role in leadership. I think they'll be a great team. Paul has a big picture approach, which I think is something that is critical to the city when it gets to finance, and particularly what we're doing in terms of looking at what we just described, economic development within the city. But Sonia's strong point is to get down into the weeds and deal with all the transactional issues. And so I think they'll be a good team, but I want to come back with a proposal to recognize really her role in the organization with that change in title. But that's my points for tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Also, I want to thank our Mayor Pro Tem for attending the Southwest Gwinnett Chamber event last week. I heard it was very, very successful, and we certainly are going to pass along a lot of other opportunities for you to participate in Mayorstead, because there's a lot of there's actually a lot of activity going on in the city of Norcross. I wish I could share it all with you. Some of it's confidential, I can't, but there's, I really appreciate the action that this council has taken on approving the Buford Highway Corridor study. That's generated a lot of interest with a lot of developers. Some that they're really coming out of the woodwork. Because Norcross is vested in Buford Highway, it's given them the incentive to want to come to Norcross and to build and to develop. Again, look for some good things over this next year there on Buford Highway all the way up to Old Norcross Tucker Road up there. Old Norcross Road, there we go. Okay, let's move to public hearings, which we have none, and then down to reports. Do we have any reports, council, at this time? Having heard none, general announcements, Movie Monday, free movies for our citizens who want to come up to the Norcross Cultural and Arts Center. Monday, March 15th, there's a movie entitled Respect. Coffee with Council is on the calendar for Saturday, March 19th at 8 a.m. at 45 South. It's Dulce Sueños? Okay. Make that change. Policy work session Monday, March 21st. Pollinator workshop, planning for pollinators Saturday the 26th. Movie Monday again, Jungle Cruise, coming up March 28th, and coming up in April, the first Friday, concert Extreme Party Band. So you don't want to miss those. Also, neighborhood cleanup, that's very important. Hopefully, we'll have the recycling company that came last week to participate in that cleanup, especially with our e-waste cleanup. The Easter egg hunt is coming up April the 16th, and on that same day we will have a special needs Easter egg hunt, and this was first initiated by former Mayor Bucky Johnson, who's here, and it's been a good turnout ever since we've had this part of our Easter egg hunt, so that worked out very, very well.
Where will that be?
At
The Easter egg hunt will be at Rossi Brundage again?
Rossi Brundage Park. And it's always a good turnout, really good turnout.
Let's hope for good weather.
Yes, very
And
much
get
so.
your kids there on time, you're getting nothing.
It's amazing how quickly those eggs
Oh,
and candy
God.
disappear.
I'm gonna get
right?
Sarah there like an hour early.
Right.
Get more candy.
Okay, our board appointments are delayed for further deliberation. Let's move to items for discussion. And the agenda has already been approved. Okay, I always look.
Accepted. We've accepted the agenda. We need to I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion on the floor to approve, accept the agenda. Do we have a second? Seconded by Councilman Beckles. Any objections? Haven't heard none. All in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Oh, right, let's move ahead. Okay. Just to reiterate, all of the items for discussion, all the items on our agenda tonight are consent except for, looks like 12, 13, and 14. So we'll begin with agenda item 12, which is the suspension of city contribution to post-retiree health care for new hirees as discussed at the February 17th Mayor and Council retreat.
I asked for this to be discussion, Mayor, because I think it is a drastic move, and I think we need to make sure that it's just discussed one more time and that everyone's aware of what's going to happen.
Very good, thank you. Eric.
So I think if you look at, in the backup, the actual recommendation is to eliminate this going forward for anyone who receives a job offer on or after tomorrow. And that date is arbitrary. You kind of talked about how quickly we would do it. I know that we had a couple police officers that we were already in the process of making offers to. Mr. Hannabeth has accepted an offer. I didn't think that we could really do it retroactive before today. You could set any other date that you're comfortable with. But I think moving forward, I sent out an email to employees. I encouraged them to contact me personally if they had any concerns, and I haven't heard back from any employee. But as you discussed at your last meeting, the intent was that I would talk about how this doesn't impact any existing employee because they all have it. We're not taking anything away. I know that you were a little concerned at your last discussion about the idea of chipping away. And let me just explain what the chipping away comment I think reflects. There are employees that remember the day when they received a Christmas bonus. They remember the day when they received a cost of living and a merit increase. We don't give a Christmas bonus. We don't give both a cost of living and a merit. We give a merit. There were years back after the Great Recession when employees went multiple years without an increase. So, you know, just for context, that's not what we're proposing, but I think to recognize that we do have some long-term employees that have been here long enough to recall when there were benefits that they don't currently receive. So it's in that context that I think people pay close attention, and moving forward, I think this is the right thing to do, to take away a benefit for future employees that is not characteristic of the market we're in today. But as I said, I've sent that email personally to every existing employee to reassure them, and at this point, no one has has asked for any further clarification, and I shared that email with both Bill and Mary Beth, since they represent overwhelmingly employees within the organization, and of course, Ms. Washington, before sending it out. But I think it is the right thing to do. It is a step that will not have a material dollar impact in the short term, but it is an impact that will grow as we have turnover, and if we continue to have significant turnover, at some point it will have an impact if people make a career with the city and stay until they retire, because after all, our health care for retirees only impacts those who are working for us until they retire. So people that work here, invest in a retirement plan, go on to work someplace else, they may get a pension benefit, but they're not going to get a health benefit unless they're working for us at the time they retire from the city. Glad to answer any questions you have.
Any questions of council on this issue?
Not a question, Mr. Mayor, but I think this is a financially responsible thing to do. It does affect only future employees. No present employee will be impacted. And looking at the actuarial reports, it's not sustainable for us to continue with this benefit for future employees. So I think this is the right move, the fiscally sound move.
Thank you for those comments. Any other council? Okay, Chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to approve, eliminate the city contribution to post-retirement health insurance for new hires who receive a job offer on or after March 8th, 2022.
Got a motion by Councilmember Hickson. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Gaynor. Any objection to moving the question? Having heard none, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, let's move to item 13.
Okay, that's for the Norcross Public Arts Commission. We're asking for funds out of our account to take care of a visioning session. And this would include the consultant services and the cost of lunch. And out of this session, we're hoping to get a document that's going to help us with our mission and vision for the future, as well as contribute to the Norcross Master Arts and Cultural Plan that is in the works.
Thank you for that presentation. And before you ask that question, let me, just for the public, any item that's added to the agenda, there's two qualifications, one or the other. If it's fiscally, makes a negative fiscal impact, or if it's time sensitive, which category would that fall under?
This is time sensitive because the visioning session is on Wednesday.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add just one item. Attached to this, Ms. Hampton prepared a budget amendment so that we, as Dr. Beckles indicates, there's funds. We're actually moving them out of fund balance and creating a budget for NPAC. And the dollar amount, which you could change at this point, would be $1,500. We'll cover the $1,200 for the facilitator. Will cover the money for lunch for those that are participating. There also have been some materials expenses incurred by the chair of NPAC that we have a check ready to present to her, but we need a budget to cover. And so it's about $154. So this would cover those. I think you would come back at a future point once you have that recommendation of visioning, because that'll be then a study that you want to fund. But moving forward, there's been a lack of transparency in NPAC funds, and this is the first step towards that. I think in your next budget, we'd like to have a full-blown budget for NPAC so that, they may still be bringing items to you, but it ought to be obvious that there's money available for that group, and they're a little unique because of the commitment of funds to them.
And if I may add about the expenses, NPAC was part of the Norcross Valentine's Day celebrations. So those hearts that you saw around town came from MPAC.
Oh, they were awesome.
So
Very
that's
good.
why the expenses.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, so thank you, City Manager Eric Johnson, for answering that question for me, because that was one of my questions in terms of where is this coming out of the line item, and you've answered that. So no questions there. The only other question I did have here is for I know we've talked about you mentioned it, and now it's escaping me, the plan.
We're going to put out an RFP.
Yeah, we're going to put out RFP. Is this going to be a part of that definition to do that, or is it something completely different?
Something different.
Okay, so
It's in addition to the RFP for a Master Arts Plan, because we do not have a Master Arts Plan.
correct. I know we need one, but I thought we were at the point where we needed to know what we needed to go to RFP. Is this going to help them vision to get to the point where we can then submit an RFP?
Yes.
Okay, that's
And
what I
we
wanted
have
to.
the RFP in a draft format that we're working on. It currently is with staff now being reviewed, so.
Okay.
We're doing our due diligence.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, the only reason this is coming to us is because of budget.
The timing of them wanting to have the visioning this Wednesday.
Okay, but let's say that they wanted to have it back, we still have to deal with it.
Yes, yes, because you need to approve the agreement.
Okay.
And that's part of what you're approving the agreement, but we're also putting in place the funds.
Okay, it just seems like it'd be streamlined if we could find some way.
I did ask that.
Okay, so as long as we're following the rules, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we are indeed following this. So. Okay, we do have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
I didn't hear a
I
motion.
thought it was from, did you make a motion?
No, I did not yet.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
To approve the council.
I was gonna say.
The cash consulting agreement between Norcross Public Works Commission and Paige Havens for marketing and strategic planning consulting for the March 9th meeting session in the cost of $1,200 for consultant services, $78.75 for the cost of lunch, funded by the Arts Fund.
We do have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Myers. Any objection to moving the question? Having heard none, all in favor, let me know by raising your right hand saying aye. Opposes, same sign.
Huh?
Okay, let's, I'm trying to get us through this, guys. Okay, House Bill 1093 and Senate Bill 494. I want to thank staff for pulling this resolution together. As stated here, the resolution is for the mayor and council expressing their opposition to House Bill 1093 and Senate Bill 494 and opposing the imposition of limitations on the city of Norcross's authority to make housing, land use, and zoning decisions within its city limits. Tracy, could you come up just briefly in case there's any additional questions on this? Tracy pulled this together hurriedly, but you did a heck of a job. It's a 2-page resolution that we're going to get to the State House almost immediately. Thank you for your hard work on this, and it's really it's very conclusive.
Well, I'll have to thank our legal team, actually, because GMA didn't give us a sample resolution to oppose, so they had to come up with this one for us. So thanks for doing that so quickly
Maybe
for
we
us.
should share with GMA, because other folks need to know how
Thank
to
you,
do
Pat.
it.
We certainly appreciate your hard work on
Thank
this.
you.
It's well written. I've read over it 2 or 3 times. It's a well-written document. As you all know, that sometimes Senate bills and House bills arbitrarily get through our legislature, and these bills actually prohibit local control. That's what this bill did. It was does, and it's a very egregious bill, and all of the cities are asked to support GMA in their opposition, even though they've not written a draft document, in their opposition to this bill. So having said that, Council, do we have any questions?
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I'd like to move that we accept and proceed forward with this resolution opposing House Bill 1093, Senate Bill 494.
We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Gaynor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Beckles. Any objection to moving the question? Having heard none, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. So we'll sign this and get this as soon as possible. Okay, council, that was the last agenda item. Anything else that we need to bring up before close out? Is there a need for an exec?
I think exec personnel would be fine.
Okay.
And legal, real estate.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to adjourn to executive session for real estate and personnel.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor to adjourn to exec for the three categories mentioned. Any objection? Having heard none, all in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Thank you so much for being here. Motion passes. So when is Impact going to start their, when are they going to do this?
Oh, excellent question. Yeah.
I have a draft.
Yeah, let's find out. How are you doing tonight?
Good. I forgot I dap you up.
Excellent question.
What's up, man?
Did you wear the right shirt today?
I know.
That was pretty funny. And I thought, it's a warm day. He should be wearing that cover over it. But you could see how many people actually figured out what it was. Yeah.
He was 15 feet.